Hey guys, how's everybody doing this afternoon? For those of you that didn't see the first one, we brewed the kombucha last Friday night and we did that live, so you can always go back and watch that. I did brew another batch tonight because I think I'm just going to do another batch of kombucha as soon as we do the second fermentation. So we're done with the first one. I feel like the flavor is where I want it to be. So we're going to bottle each one, and then we'll individually flavor them. So we have these brew and seal bottles, and you can use quart jars. They work too. You just have to be really careful making sure they get worked often enough. These have a little bit of a rubber gasket in the lid, so it makes it a little easier to make sure that too much pressure doesn't build up in the bottle. So we're just gonna put the kombucha that's brewed in these bottles, and then I picked out a few flavors, and then we will flavor those for the second fermentation, and we'll go from there. So I'm just gonna, so this is our kombucha funnel. It has a strainer in the inside, and that way you can use it to make sure that you don't end up with any scobies or anything that might come out of the batch. So I'm just gonna put it through the funnel. And normally I expect depends how much starter fluid I put in, but I generally get about 4 to 5 of the brew and seal bottles out of a batch of kombucha. So just to be safe, I picked up 6 of the fruit teas that we're going to make. I did take 2 of the bubbly teas. I've heard great things about the bubbly teas in the kombucha as a flavor. So I'm going to try that this time. I have not tried that before. So we picked out the bubbly strawberry and the bubbly pineapple. And then I have Italian orange soda. And I have strawberry jammin', peach schnapps, and raspberry cosmopolitan that I picked out. And I'm sure we're not going to get 6 bottles out of here the way it's looking. So we'll probably just have to pick and choose what we're going to do. So the kombucha itself, you start with, for those of you that didn't watch the video, and I know I missed part of it on the live. So you start with 10 cups of cold water in your pitcher, and then you brew 3 cups of the kombucha base, and I'm using the green kombucha base. And you brew that, so you use your boiling water and add a cup of cane sugar to that, and dissolve your sugar, and then you brew your kombucha. The green base gets brewed for 10 minutes. I think the black is the same. And brew that, and then you want to make sure that when you add that tea to your cold water, that's about room temperature, because if you don't want it to be too hot when you add your SCOBY, because that can damage it. So then when I get this part out, I'll just leave a little bit in there. I have starter in the jar over there. You will see that I'm not taking the kombucha out of is my SCOBY Hotel. So that has my extra SCOBYs, and last time I forgot to feed them on the live, so the next morning I came and fed them. And you just feed them with the brewed sweet tea. So I will take my SCOBY out of here when I'm done and put it over in the jar while I put my hot and cold water together, just to be sure that it isn't too hot or too cold. And this is I had my jar all cleaned when we started these batches. Generally, after every couple batches, you want to clean your jar just to make sure no SCOBYs are building up inside your. A couple of these I filled a little too full, so I'm going to transfer some to this other jar. because the scobies can build up inside there, and then the dispenser doesn't work very well. So then you're going to add your fruit tea. You're going to add 2 teaspoons of the fruit tea and 2 teaspoons of the cane sugar. I have done it without the cane sugar. If you're worried about the sugar, it does not get as much fizz without the sugar because the SCOBY needs that sugar in order to ferment and create that reaction. So if you don't want the sugar, you certainly do not have to add it, but just let yourself know that it probably is not going to get as fizzy without it. So this one is going to be the Italian orange soda. I thought that sounded kind of interesting as a kombucha flavor. So 2 teaspoons of that, and then I'm going to add the 2 teaspoons of sugar. And then close it up. I will probably shake that a little bit to try to get the sugar to dissolve. Next, I'm going to do my bubbly strawberry. So I'm going to add my sugar, since I'm already in there. So in how long it ferments the first time is pretty much up to your flavor. So like I brewed it last Friday night. Generally mine is about the flavor I like at 4 days when I do it in the kitchen. This batch I'm doing in the basement. So it's a little cooler. The warmer it is, generally the faster it will get to the stage you want it. And I believe it's 10 days after you create the batch that you can keep tasting it up to that point. And then after that, it might be too vinegary to use as a kombucha. And there's other things you can do with it if it gets to that point. You can either add more sugar to bring it back, or some people use it in like salad dressings as a vinegar base. The same with your scobies. If your scobies have lots of babies and it's more than you can use in your hotel, there's all kinds of things you can use them for online. So that one is the strawberry jammin'. That's just one of the fruit teas we have. I haven't opened this. This is the pineapple one. And our bubbly teas, if you haven't seen what our bubbly teas are in the past, our bubbly teas are made, instead of with tapioca, we use basil seeds. They aren't as overly sweetened, and they tend to be a little better for you than just the sweetness of the tapioca. So it's the fruit chunks that are freeze dried and the basil seeds. So that's the pineapple one. And then I think we'll do the raspberry cosmopolitan. I think that one is going to be a nice flavor in the kombucha. And with our fruit teas, you have a choice if you want to. Some people leave the fruit in there because you can easily consume the fruit. It's just freeze-dried fruit. I tend to strain mine out just to kind of keep it from fermenting anymore. So once this gets to the fizz amount that you want it to be at, then I strain the fruit and put the bottles in the refrigerator, and then you can just drink it straight out of the fridge as you want it. So that's as much work as that is to bottle them up. I guess while I'm live, I could go ahead and show you how we go about brewing the kombucha. For those of you that missed the other video, if you want to see that, you always want to make sure your hands are clean, so wash them good before you touch your SCOBY, just so you're not getting anything on them that might have germs and cause something to grow on them. Let me get my dish rag out here that I brought down. Because I'm working in the basement, it isn't quite as convenient as being up in the kitchen, but our kitchen doesn't have a lot of space to do stuff like this. So I'm just going to reach in and take him out and put him back in the hotel. Then I'm going to dump this back in to kind of feed my SCOBYs that are in there. So now we're back to an empty jar. So I brought down cold, clean water from upstairs. So I've got a half gallon, which I believe should be 8 cups. And then I did about a half a quart, so that's 2 more cups. So that should be my 10 cups. Then I have this is the sweet tea that I was brewing over here. So like I said, that's just 3 cups of boiling water. And then you dissolve your cup of cane sugar in that. And once that's dissolved, then you put your tea in there. And with the green tea base, that can be reused 3 times. So this is the 3rd batch I'm making with that. So that's 15 grams and it's usable 3 times. So the total bag is 75 grams. So you get 5 batches, and then you can use each of those batches 3 times. So really you can do 15 batches of kombucha out of 1 bag. So that's our tea. Then we're also going to add a cup of the starter. Beans, I brought down cold water. That is very cool to the touch. So I'm comfortable that my SCOBY will be fine in there. So these are my SCOBYs. So I'm just going to take one out of there. And put them in there. These kind of sink into the bottom. They're all kind of different. And sometimes the same batch will change every time you look at it. It will be floating somewhere different. This guy evidently wants to go back into the kombucha. So, and the more starter fluid you use, the faster your brew is going to brew. So if you have more starter fluid and you only have 1 SCOBY, you can certainly add it on. Just know that your SCOBYs or your kombucha is going to brew faster than if you just added a cup. So then for this stage, we're just going to add our cover back on instead of the lid. I put the lid on there before I went live because I wanted you guys to be able to see what the kombucha looked like. That's all there is to it. And then we have another batch brewing for probably next weekend to start the 2nd fermentation. So then every 2 days, we will burp these bottles and make sure they're not getting too much pressure inside of them. With these, that's really easy. You just flip the lid. With your quart jar, of course, it's not a lot more difficult. You're just going to unscrew the lid enough that you know it's getting some of the pressure out of there, so it's not getting overly pressurized inside the bottle. So every 2 days, we'll burp these, check how they're doing, if they're getting to the point that we're ready to strain them. Like with these bubbly teas, especially beans we can consume generally with the bubble tea, you're drinking all of it all the time. The fruit tea, you're sometimes not drinking all the fruit. With the bubbly tea, I won't strain this. I will leave that all in there. So we'll see. Maybe this time I will try leaving the fruit tea in there too. We'll just see how it goes, and maybe we'll go live again and take a look when they're getting closer and see, kind of show you what they look like as they get. Oh, sorry. I see I have a couple questions. I can't zoom in because I'm using my computer, because it's easier with the computer to go live because it flips things right, whereas with an Android, I can't flip it so you can read things. In the fridge, I think the last time I brewed was November, and I still have a little bit left, and I'm still drinking it. Sometimes when you have them for a while, and you'll see like a baby SCOBY kind of forming in the kombucha, that just means that you have a really good batch of kombucha, because it can form that SCOBY without actually having a SCOBY in there. So that one that's been in the fridge since November is still perfectly fine. I'm just finishing that last bottle that I brewed back in November. So I haven't seen, generally in the fridge, they're not, I don't see them getting moldy. Sometimes when you're doing this stage, sometimes people worry that they're seeing mold. So you want to look at it and tell if it's the blue mold that we're used to, or if it's just something brown. It is the yeast, because the SCOBY has natural yeast in it. So that sometimes will build up on the side of the jar in your hotel, or even in your kombucha batch. So if you guys if you have any other questions when you get done watching this, feel free to let me know. There's the other Kombucha Live where we did the original batch in the same group. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to comment or ask them, and I'm happy to respond or go live, and we can go through anything else that you guys maybe want to see or talk about. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.